Hey everyone, Anna Marie with Just Stamp. I am here today to share with you a Thanksgiving pocket card created with the Painted Christmas Suite from Stampin' Up's 2021 holiday catalog. So here's our finished project. I will be sharing with you how to make the pocket and the insert and the coordinating envelope. I'll share measurements and supplies as I go along. So let's get started. I'm going to leave this as a reference right up here. I'm going to bring in my cardstock and pattern paper. My cardstock is Rich Raspberry. It measures 10 1/4 by 7 3/4, and I have a coordinating piece of the Blackberry Beauty Designer Series paper that's rich with Rich Raspberry and Blackberry Bliss paper. Perfect for autumn. So let's get started. I'm going to start with some scoring. I'll give you measurements as I go along. I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Trimmer, and I'm going to start with the long end up at the top. I'm going to come over and I am going to score at 3 1/8. So I'm going to use my scoring blade on my Stampin' Trimmer. And I'm going to score also on the opposite side at 3 1/8. So I'm going to rotate just 180 degrees, and I'm going to score down once again at 3 1/8. I'm going to rotate counterclockwise and score on the short edge at 2 1/2. So I'm going to bring that back. All right, so done with the scoring. I'm now going to do some marking just before we cut. And I'm going to come in, I'm going to have a little pencil at the ready. And I am going to push up to 2 3/4. I'm going to make a small dot up at the top. And let's see if I can push this up so you can see. Then I'm going to push over to 5 1/4. This time I'm going to mark down at the bottom. So the bottom is the 2 1/2 inch flap. That's how I know which is the bottom, which is the top of the pocket. Then I'm going to slide over, and again, I'm going to make a mark at the top at 7 1/2. So a small mark here, and there we go. Now I am ready to rotate. I'm going to rotate, let's see, counterclockwise, and I'm going to make a mark on the short edge at 2 1/2, one side, and also down on the opposite side. So down at the bottom of the paper, I'm going to mark also at 2 1/2. Now I'm ready to cut. The way I'm going to cut, I'm going to be cutting on the diagonal. I'm going to put the 2 3/4 mark on the track, and I'm going to line it up with the 2 1/2 inch mark on the short side. So I'm going to put both of those marks on the track and bring my cutting blade in, cut off that triangle. We don't need that. I'm going to rotate counterclockwise. I'm going to put that 2 1/2 inch mark and the 5 1/4 inch mark on the track. And I'm going to cut off again. We're going to have another triangle. Cut that off. We don't need it. I'm going to rotate again counterclockwise. There's my 5 1/4 inch mark, and I'm going to bring it up to 2 1/2, right like so. And then one final cut. I'm going to rotate to the 2 1/2 inch mark and the 2 1/4 on the opposite side. So just like so. And I'm going to cut that as well. So while I have my paper trimmer here, I'm going to cut my Blackberry Beauty paper. I have got a 6 inch square at the moment. I'm going to cut on the diagonal 2 times. So I'm going to put it up one corner up at the top, the opposite corner on the track, and I'm going to cut that in half on the diagonal. I'm going to wind up with 4 triangles. So now what I'm going to do is keep these together and rotate it to the opposite corner. And I'm going to put the top and bottom on the track. I want to make sure I have these 2 pieces together, almost like I hadn't cut yet. And I'm going to cut once again to create 4 triangles. So one more cut. And I'm going to put my paper trimmer aside, come back in, we are ready to do a little bit of decorating. Let me push that up. I'm going to come in with my bone folder, one of my essential tools, and I'm going to fold and burnish on the score lines of the cardstock so I can see my scores. I want the valley fold on the outside, so I'm just going to flip that over. I will fold and burnish on all the score lines, sides, bottom, and the opposite side. And I'm going to eliminate those small corners. So coming down to the bottom of the envelope, I'm going to snip off the tiny triangle here. Whoops, wrong scissors. I'm using my ribbon scissors. Here we go. Just like so. I'm going to eliminate that small piece, and also on the opposite side. There we go. All right, so essentially this is the pocket. I am going to go ahead and erase those marks that we made to help with the cutting. And now I'm going to decorate with the rich pattern paper. I'm going to bring in the owls in the background, and I just want to make sure these are going the right way. I've kind of got them mixed up here. So that one goes there, and here, and then I've got a bottom. So let's adhere these, and I'm going to use my favorite forgiving adhesive. I am going to come up, whoops, I've got one more mark I want to eliminate. I'm going to put a small trail of liquid glue. I'm not going to go up to the edge. I don't want it oozing out. I do want to secure all the sides. And I'll bring in my, let's see, I've got, make sure I've got the right, let's make sure I've got the right one here. This is going to be adhered with a small border, like 1/16 of an inch border. And I have a tiny bit of glue here, so I want to eliminate that. Let me bring in a small scrap. There we go. Next, I'm going to trim this. So I'm just going to flip it over, hold that down, and I'm just going to use my cardstock as a guide to make a straight cut and eliminate that triangle, and do the same on the opposite side. So just going to eliminate this here. And I've got one more trimming to do on this piece. Flip that over, and I have about a 1/2 inch to remove here. I'm just using the cardstock as my guide to trim off. And I need to do the same on the 2 side flaps as well. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere or add some liquid glue right up. You could use Seal Plus. I find the liquid glue a little bit more forgiving if we don't land in the right spot the first time. Again, I'm leaving a small border. Just like so. And I am going to trim this off as well, just like the base. So just use the cardstock as your guide. And I have one last cut on this paper. Let's flip it over, and I just have the tiniest little sliver to even this up. There we go. One last flap. And I'm going to add my liquid glue. And let's see, I'll add this. You're going to have one, I'm going to use this one. You're going to have one triangle of pattern paper left. You don't need for this project. I'm going to leave a small border. It's about 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to adhere that. I'm going to go ahead and burnish this down straight. And I want to pull that over just the tiniest bit. There we go. And I want to trim this up as well. Whoops. Come off. And one more side. And one last edge, just the tiniest bit to trim off. There we go. All right, so there is the pocket to our card. We are ready to do some stamping. So I'm going to set this aside for the time being. And I'm going to start with the label that was created by one of the coordinating dies. I'm going to be stamping in Rich Razzleberry. And I'm taking one of the sentiments from the stamp set. I'm going to ink up. And this happens to say, friends like you make this season special. So I'm going to stamp slightly to the left. I want to allow some space for my art on the label. And I'm not finished with the Rich Razzleberry yet. I'm going to bring in first my insert. This is going to have a greeting stamped in Rich Razzleberry. And the greeting actually comes from a Wish for Everything stamp set. It's a very handy stamp set to have for all the holidays and occasions you might send a card for. I'm inking up in Rich Razzleberry once again, and I'm going to stamp about 2 inches from the top. I don't want it to peek through on the envelope. And let's see, one more thing with my stamping. So I'm going to put the Rich Razzleberry aside just for the moment. And I'm going to do some stamping in Evening Evergreen. I'm going to add some alpine foliage here with one of the stamps. And it's just a little branch of pine. I'm going to be stamping off. So stamp, and I'm going to put it down at the bottom of the insert. I'm starting from the center. There we go. And I'll add some foliage also to the label towards the top and also pointing downward. All right, and since I have the ink out, I'm also going to do the coordinating envelope. So I'm going to put a little bit of that alpine foliage on the envelope as well, stamping off. Still an Evening Evergreen, and one more stamp. There we go. Next, I'm going to add a stem for a berry branch. So let's see if I can bring in Early Espresso. And I'm going to stamp the branch for the berries on a piece of Very Vanilla scrap. And I'll do 3. I'm only going to need 2, but I'm going to do an extra just for good measure. And I also want some berries, Rich Razzleberry berries. So let's bring in Rich Razzleberry one more time and stamp. And I'll just pick the best 2 of 3. Here we go. Also want a couple berry branches on the envelope, so let's go ahead and stamp those at this time as well. All right, and add the berries. I'm trying not to get my head in your viewing area. There you go. So we have our envelope done. I'm going to set that aside for the time being. And I think we are done stamping. I'm going to get rid of the ink. There's one more thing I want to stamp. I have die cuts from the coordinating dies, and I have 2 different styles of foliage. So I'm going to stamp on. These have been cut from the gold vellum paper. And I'm going to stamp in Bumblebee ink. I'm just going to add a little bit of detail by stamping down the same image on the die cut. Since it is a photopolymer stamp set, I can see right through, and it makes it really convenient for stamping on a small die cut. I can see right through the stamp to a line, and I'm going to be doing a couple of these. So let me share the difference. This one has the inked image, and you can see a little bit more shimmer and shine than not stamping. So I do prefer the stamped one. If you don't want to do the extra step, it's not going to take away from your project. I'm going to stamp that down, and I'm going to do the other style of branch as well, also in Bumblebee ink. There we go. And one last inking, just like so. And we are done with the stamping. Let's do some assembly. And we're going to start off by building pine cones using die cuts from the same coordinating die set. I've die cut 2 solid pine cones in the brushed metallic gold and 2 of the detailed pine cones. The die set does include 2 of each die, so in one pass you can get all 4 cuttings, all 4 die cuts. What I'm going to do now is layer them, and I am going to bring in my Pick-a tool. I'm going to use glue dots. These are from one of the kits. They're awesome for small projects, and I've actually got 2 sizes. I have a larger one and a smaller one I'm going to use. One at the top. This is just going to layer up the pine cones. So using the Pick-a tool piercing tip to remove the covering on the glue dots. Can just layer up, and the glue dot helps give a little bit of dimension on the layers, not as much as a dimensional would offer, but it is a nice little detail. And I'm going to go ahead and layer up as well. All right, these pine cones go on the label, and we're going to put 2 on. The back one is going to be flat adhered, so I'm just going to put a dot of my liquid glue and put that right over top the bow. And the front one I'm going to add with a mini dimensional. Just going to bring that in, pop that right on, and let's see, do like so. There we go. There's our label ready to go. And let's see, I just need to die cut my berry branches. So let's go ahead and take care of that before we continue on. The die set does include the dies to cut the small berry branches, and I'm using the mini cut and emboss machine with the die. Just going to pop that right on, do a little bit of quick cutting. When I use the mini machine, it's always helpful to stagger the plates and get the feed started before you start cranking. It makes die cutting very easy. And let's see, there's one branch. I'm going to use a second on my card, so go ahead and die cut these. Here we go. One more pass. And we are finished with the die cutting, so I'm going to push that aside. All right, so let's layer up our foliage. I am going to bring in the 2 branches with the pointy leaves, and I'm going to layer on the berry branches. I'm going to use one of the mini dots, the larger one. I'm just going to put that right down onto the vellum layer, and still using the Pick-a tool to remove the backing on the glue dot. I'll just add the berries. And the second one, these will go on my label. But first I'm going to go ahead and add these to my pocket. So I do want to secure this closed. I'm just going to use glue dots on the tips of the triangle, the outside and the inside. So I'm going to bring in my more aggressive glue dots. Let's see, where are they? Let me bring in, here we go, on the tape runner. There we go. So I want one on the outside and one on the inside. That'll help keep it nice and secure. I'm gonna fold that up like so. And I have about 21 inches of gold ribbon. And here is where the little slits on the label come in very handy. I'm just gonna push the ribbon through front to back and then come up, back to front, feed it through. And I will tie a bow at the left. And this is not going to be secured, so you still have time to tweak the placement of your label. If you want it lower or higher, you're not going to be committed. Nothing is glued down. Just tie a bow. And this is actually more ribbon than you need, but better to have a little bit more than not enough. It's a little bit wasteful when you cut too short. And there we go. There's our bow to the left. We'll take care of trimming that up in a bit. Next, I'm going to add my foliage behind, and I'm going to start off with the leaves that have the berries. I'm going to add a glue dot to the front so that I can secure it right behind the label as I position it in place. So just like so. This is going to be secured to the label. So I'm going to put it right like so. The second one goes down below. And this is being attached right to the label. That's why I put the glue dot on the front. And then finally, we're going to add the other stems, still with a mini glue dot. And this will be also adhered to the label itself. We're just going to position that right behind the other leaf, pressing down. And I've got one more to attach. And again, just position it right in place where you'd like it. It's kind of like flower arranging. So you can just lift and push it right in place. I like to just press down to get the nice contact I need for that. And we are almost done. A couple more steps. We have our insert, and I want to add a little bit of shine to the insert. So I've punched a oval label in the brushed metallic, and I have made a score right down the middle. Makes it a lot easier to fold. I'm just going to burnish that. And I am going to attach this with Seal Plus to avoid any smudges that might happen with liquid glue. So if you have any adhesive that kind of flows off the label, just fold it back. I'm going to eyeball this, put it right in the center of my insert, right up to the score line. I'm going to butt that right at the top. And I'm going to press down, close that up. And again, I'm going to burnish it. I'm going to flip it over so I don't mark the gold foil. Nice contact there. This gets slipped right inside. Now notice there's lots of space for your gratitude greeting. Some pretty decoration down at the bottom. That gets slipped right inside. Like so. And one more thing, I want to add a tiny bit of sparkle with my Wink of Stella. So I'm going to bring in a Wink of Stella brush, add some sparkle to the berries, just like so. So I've got some shine, I've got some sparkle, I've got some dimension on the rich, bright, bold color for fall. And finally, I'm going to trim up the tails of the ribbon. Bring that down. That's just about the height I'd like. Just going to angle that a little bit differently. There we go. And we are set. And here's our envelope. So we have our Friends Like You Make the Season Special, very special card for Thanksgiving. All right, if you have any questions or comments, please post right below. I will provide links for the supplies used on this project. Thanks so much.